Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. So, as you guys do know, let me fix this because I don't know, for some reason they got low. Okay, I'm a perfectionist, man, so I like stuff being like just so. Anyway, so you guys know that we do have the 5th round of the U.S. Championships, U.S. Chess Championships. So we have Lázaro Bruzón Batista versus Wesley. So I have a couple languages to speak. So of course, for my people in the Philippines, I will say maligayang pagdating sa mga chess, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, you lit, magandang umaga, magandang hapon. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. And so anybody who is coming from, because Batista is originally from Cuba, anybody who is coming from Cuba or who does speak Spanish, I will say bienvenidos al ajedrez, damas y caballeros. Appreciate you guys very much. Muchas gracias para ver mi video, mis amigos. Vamos, let's go. For anybody, yeah, that's everything. So that's got English, Tagalog, Spanish. Let's roll. Okay, so we do have E4. We got E5. So, you know, this is probably like one of the most heaviest played, other than the Sicilian. This is one of the most heavily played. You know, you are just contesting the center. Oops. You are just contesting the center, just like Black is doing. You know, you're grabbing some space. Black's grabbing some space. So you're pretty much keeping things equal. Not that you want it to be exactly the same, but, you know, you're just keeping everything fairly equal. So knight does come to F3. We do see knight to F6. And so this is actually a pet of Caruana. Like, he definitely likes playing the Petrov, or as it's known, the Russian defense. So that is what we have on the board. We do have knight takes E5, which is going to be very heavy. And then D6 comes. This is like super standard stuff. We're almost always going to see this. And we do see knight to D3. And this is jumping into some very rare waters. You know, this is definitely very down on the list. So this is a major sideline. You almost always see knight coming back to F3. And then after knight takes E4, you do have D4. You know, threatening to kind of trap the knight in the center and, you know, take advantage of the open file. So usually you see D5 and then bishop comes to D3. And this is actually very, very nice for white. So there is a very high win percentage for white doing this. But, you know, sometimes your opponent wants to try to throw you off, so they'll go knight to D3. You have to be very careful, though, because you definitely don't want to be blocking this bishop in like this. Ideally, you push this pawn either to D3 or D4. So, you know, putting the knight in front of the pawn can be kind of detrimental to your health. So we do see knight takes E4. We have queen up to E2. Queen comes to E7, so now we don't have any problems on this E file. Knight comes to F4. We see knight to C6, and, you know, we are possibly threatening some type of movement here. So C3 is just like the perfect move in the position just to prevent, you know, restrict the knight as much as possible. You guys are always hearing me talk about, you know, restricting the movements of knights and stuff like that. So that's, you know, pretty nice. So the knight does come back to F6. We see D4, and then we have the hyper-aggressive G5. And, you know, everything is fairly equal. I mean, Black has, you know, maybe a tiny edge, if any. But, I mean, you know, you're just trying to get this knight out of the center of the board. It's causing some annoyance. We do see queen takes E7 with check. And then knight takes E7. And this is the novelty of the game. Almost always in this position, you have seen bishop takes E7. I think it's only like once or twice that you've actually seen this position, but the bishop would take. It actually makes a little bit more sense just because you are, you know, kind of getting your bishop developed and you're not moving the knight multiple times, and you still do have this tempo on this knight. But we do have knight takes E7. And then we have knight down to E2. And I just want you guys to kind of take a look at the position. Because, you know, it's like you kind of have these knights, you know, blocking their bishops. You know, you got this crazy G-pawn move. You know, neither side has really kind of developed all the way. So, you know, the thing about these players is they're very, very high level. You know, they're the top, right? So, I mean, even though they are the top, I mean, it is very hard to get away with this type of play. So, take from this game, you know, kind of not the way that you develop your pieces and stuff like that. Always try to, you know, use each move wisely. You know, You don't always have to do it, but I mean, the knights like to be on C3 and F3. You know, you want to try to get your bishops out to C4 and F4. You know, you want to make sure that you're not touching pieces multiple times. You know, you're following the principles of chess, because no matter who you are, this can still mess you up if you do not follow the principles of chess. We do have H6. Of course, you know, the bishop was attacking this this pawn. So we do see knight over to G3. Knight comes to F5. We're trying to get it out of the way of the bishop. And then we do see bishop to D3. So, you know, white is, you know, kind of doing their little development. We do see knight takes G3, pawn takes G3. And it might look kind of weird. But two things that you've done. You've captured towards the center, which is always preferred. And you are actually threatening to take this pawn here because it is pinned. This pawn is pinned to this rook. So, you know, you definitely do have some threats. So you've given yourself a nice little, you know, half open file, at least as white. Bishop does come to G7. That's the only thing that's really going to protect the position. Knight does come to A3. You see bishop to E6. And then we actually see knight to C4 in the game. I mean, it's an okay move. But, you know, something that was really nice to play is actually F3. Just doing the restricting again with this knight. And then after, you would see probably castles by black. Alongside castles, you kind of have a little bit of a space for the king to come into F2. And then C5 would come, and then you see knight back to C2. And you are prepared to take this, you know, capture back with the knight. Centralize your knight, you know, and just kind of, you know, make sure that you get your bishop developed. And then you have your rooks connected. But like I said, we do see knight to C4. We see knight to D5. And then we have knight back to E3. And I want to ask you guys right now to go ahead and pause the video and see if you can guess what black plays in this position. Okay, so it's not like a very hard move. It's not like it's some deep tactical situation, but it's very positional. And it's something that I think a lot of you guys that watch my videos should probably figure out. You guys hear me talk all the time when you have a C4, you know, E4 situation or C4, D4 situation. You know, C5 is going to usually come to try to combat that nice center you have established. And even though you don't have C4, D4 here, you still have the same type of a concept going on. And so if you guess C5, you would be very positionally correct. And I just realized I did change my my chess legends. So let me just kind of sidestep. So, you know, Luis Ramirez de Lucena was a Spanish chess player in the late 1400s, early 1500s. And he actually wrote the oldest surviving chess book to date. And I'm going to read this to you. So it is Repetición de Amores y Arte de Ajedrez con CL 150 Juegos de Partido. So that's a crazy, you know, amount of words. It is, you know, in English, the repetition of love and art of playing chess with 150 game examples. You know, and so it's, you know, he also is named for the Lucena position. Any of you guys that have studied endgames, you guys have heard that the Lucena position is the key to all endgames. Definitely something that you should know if you do not look that up. But continuing with the game, like I said, C5 is a very logical positional move. You are just trying to break down this structure. And the problem is, you know, white doesn't have an E-pawn. So if he can't take this pawn back with the piece, he is forced to have himself an isolated pawn, just like you do as black. So it's a very logical positional type of move. Bishop does come to E4. You're trying to put a double attack on this knight. Knight does take E3. The bishop takes E3. And then you have the very nice, you know, Zwischenzug move of D5, and you're just asking that bishop, where does it want to go? And so we do see bishop back to C2, and we have pawn takes D4, pawn takes D4, or bishop takes D4, bishop takes D4, pawn takes D4. And then we do have rook over to C8. And something I want to go back and mention, after you did see bishop takes E3 and then you saw D5, a slight better placement for the bishop was actually going back to D3, because then you don't have that tempo. You know, after you have all of these trades like before, you don't have that rook to C8 tempo. And you really kind of have a free move. It doesn't really result in like crazy better position, but it's just those little things sometimes you really want to be thinking about when you're moving a piece somewhere is, you know, is your opponent capable of attacking that piece with the tempo and, you know, kind of wasting a move for you. So like I said, we did see rook over to C8, and then now we have to do something with this bishop. So we do move it to D3. King does come to E7. We see king up to D2. So we're getting into the end game. You know, we're starting to, you know, we got our rooks connected. So, I mean, both players are kind of doing what they need to be doing. Slight differences. I mean, white does have a little bit of an issue with their structure. A little bit more than black, but it's not really anything that's crazy. We do see rook over to c6, preparing to double on the c file. We do see b3. We got a5, you know, trying to see if we can take like maybe a little chunk out of this pawn structure over here. We do see rook a to c1, rook takes c1, rook takes c1, and then we do see rook over to c8. And white doesn't really too much want to trade, you know, because we're going to get into like a situation where we have the same pawns, you know, we have the same color bishops. But unfortunately, there really isn't a lot better to do. Like, I mean, you have rook over to h1 attacking the pawn, but black is just going to protect that with rook to h8. We see rook back to c1, rook back to c8. We see rook back to h1, rook back to h8, and then we do see rook over to c1. And we have drawn the game by threefold repetition. When you got back into this position here, you know, once we did move the rook over, there wasn't really a whole lot that was going on because you do have some weaknesses as black. So, you know, after we trade here, you kind of need to contest this file. So that is that game. It wasn't, you know, I love being able to show games that aren't draws. But, you know, unfortunately, we only have one round per day. And so, I mean, this was what we had to show. So let me check real quick and see what Wesley So is looking like. He is actually tied for third with Linier Dominguez Perez. So let me get off of this screen here. So yes, that is that. I appreciate you guys very much for coming by. You know, muchas gracias, mis amigos, para ver mi video. You know, maraming salamat po sa nanonood ng aking mga video, aking mga kaibigan. Appreciate you guys very much, and I will see you guys next time.